This short video goes over the application materials some graduate programs may require, but not all, or sometimes programs may make these optional. When researching different graduate programs you are interested in and their application requirements, you will probably find different programs have different requirements. In addition to your statement of purpose, transcripts, and letters of recommendation, some programs may require or make optional other materials such as a writing sample, GREs, and CVs. Here, I'll talk about each of these in turn. Graduate programs may require a writing sample or leave it optional. If a department requires a writing sample, they should stipulate how long they want it to be. If there are no guidelines, you can assume they want it to be around 15 pages. If you need to cut down a writing example you already have but is too long, you can include the introduction, discussion, and conclusion because those are the parts that require the most writing and original thoughts. As a rule, do not write something new to submit. You should submit a scholarly paper, thesis, or article that you've already written and that has been edited and reviewed by a professor. The writing sample is intended more for the department to see your writing style and abilities, but should be scholarly and ideally focused on research. For instance, if you're applying to a PhD program, do not submit the novella you wrote for your creative writing class. However, if the paper you submit is not directly related to the research you are proposing in your application, it's generally not a problem. If it is optional and you do not have a writing sample that is research focused, then I wouldn't suggest you write something specific for your application. Instead, you can focus on the other parts of your application. But say you are currently a junior right now and that you are not in an honors program where you're required to write an honors thesis. Since you have 2 to 3 more semesters left before graduating and applying to graduate school, you should purposely work towards getting a writing assignment. You can take a class that's going to require a research project and write-up, or if you're working with faculty on a research project, you can consult them on how you can turn the research work you're doing into a writing project. They may have you take a lead on a research paper to present at a conference or take the lead on a poster presentation. As long as you are the lead or first author and did a majority of the work, even submitting a PDF of a research poster that you present at an academic conference would be worthwhile, if that is the only writing example you have. When in doubt, ask those professors and faculty you're building relationships with to advise you on whether you need to have a writing sample and how to develop one. If the program or programs you're applying to don't require the graduate record exam or the GRE, but say it is optional, you don't have to take it. However, say you have a lower GPA or not so great letters of recommendation, you may want to consider taking the GRE. That is, if you're good at taking standardized tests and can get a high score to help balance out your application. If the program you apply to requires it, then you must take it. But know that the GRE is not just a test you take without preparation. It's a specific type of test and you need to study for it and understand how it is scored. Think of the GRE as an SAT or ACT, but more difficult. There is a math or quantitative section, an English or verbal section, and an analytical writing section. Some programs may require a minimum score on the GRE, so if the program requires it, it's good to know what the minimum score expectation is so you can aim for that. Also, you should plan to take the GRE 4 to 6 months before the deadline to apply so that you can retake it if you need to. But keep in mind that it costs each time you take it, so you want to be as prepared to take it as you can the first time. If you search for GRE test scheduling, you can find the locations near you that offer it and see the testing dates and costs. There are also different options and access to test prep and practice tests. This includes looking to the Career Advising Office or Center on campus and seeing if there are free options for online test prep. The GRE.org has practice tests online, and there are also resources from books and websites from PowerPrep, Barron's, Kaplan, and Princeton Review. Once you sign up to take the test, you can indicate where you want the score sent so they can directly transmit your results to the programs you're applying to. The last optional materials I'll discuss is the CV. Academics use CVs, which is short for curriculum vitae or simply just vitae, to list their work out. Think of a CV as a type of resume, but it differs quite a bit from traditional resume in that it focuses on academic achievements. It also doesn't use bullets to explain work completed. There is no one way to create a CV, but listed here are some different headings of information you can include. Most of these headings can be in any order that makes sense for you, but when in doubt, reach out to your faculty advisors about how to structure it, or the Career Advising Office can also help. First, we have name and contact information. It's always important to list your contact information for your current institution or place of employment with your current email address. Typically, you don't include your home address on a CV. The next potential heading is areas of interest, which is a listing of your varied academic interests and perhaps specific courses you have taken. Then we have the education heading, where you can list your degrees earned or in progress, institutions, and years of graduation. You may also include the titles of your thesis here, if you have one. Next is the grants, honors, and awards section, where you can put any grants received, honors bestowed upon you for your work, and awards you may have received for teaching or service. Then we have the publications and presentations headings. This is where you list your published articles and books or book chapters, as well as scholarly presentations given at conferences. If there are not many of both, you might consider combining them into one section. Under the employment and experience heading, you can include any teaching experience or teaching assistant roles, laboratory experiences, field experiences, volunteer work, leadership, or other relevant experiences. Toward the end of the CV, you can also include scholarly or professional memberships section, where you can list any of the professional organizations of which you are a member. If you have held an office or a position in a particular organization, you can either say so here or leave this information for the experience section. The last section should be references. If you're applying to a particular program or position, here you should list individuals who have agreed to write letters of recommendation for you. You should include their name, position, institutional affiliation, their email, and if they have one, their work phone number. Remember, these are just possible headings to include. If you're early in your academic career, you may not have a lot of information to include on a CV. So if you don't have anything to put under one of these headings, then don't include the heading on your CV. Let's take a look at an example. Here are the first 2 pages of my CV when I was early in my academic career. I was finishing up my PhD, so I have more experience listed than I would have had just entering graduate school. You can see I've listed my contact information, education, professional positions, and then professional experience, which is mostly teaching related. Then towards the bottom of the second page, I have a publication section and the research activity section. Let's move to the last 2 pages. Under the research activities, I have several subheadings, including presentations, research projects, and the titles of my dissertation and thesis. Trailing, I listed my research interests, my graduate faculty committee members, my professional affiliations, language and skills, and here I said references were available upon request. This is because this CV was not for anything specific. So, as you can see, this may be quite different than what you were imagining when I explained the different types of headings you can include. This just shows that CVs are highly different depending on the individual and their experience and how they choose to represent that experience. CVs can go on and on and on for pages, but if you have very little experience, having only 1 or 2 pages is just fine. This all may seem quite overwhelming, especially if you're an undergraduate who doesn't have a lot of research or teaching experience. So let's talk about a different option. If you don't have a lot of academic experience to list on a CV, you may want to consider a combined CV resume. Here's a brief example of what this may look like. As you can see, I still have my education listed towards the beginning. Then I list out my work experience, and this has the traditional resume bullets that describe what I did for that position. Then after that, I go into more CV experience and list instructional experience and then scholarly activities. Here you could include the courses you took as an undergraduate that relate to the program you're applying to and your research interests. Then the last part of this example shows a list of skills, which you typically see in a resume, but not in a CV. As I mentioned, you could have 1 page or 2 pages of text for your CV or your CV resume at early stages of your academic career, but try to make it one or the other. That is, don't submit something that is a page and a quarter or a page and a half. When in doubt, ask your faculty advisors for advice on aspect of this application. Knowing what application materials you'll need to prepare well in advance of applying is crucial. Applying to graduate programs, whether it's a master's or doctoral program, takes a lot of time and effort. If the program states something is optional, then you will need to closely consider if you would like to turn in that aspect of the application. If you do turn in optional materials, make sure they are polished and professional. That is, if the GRE is optional and you didn't do well on it, then probably not turning in those scores would be a good idea, as you wouldn't want them to hurt your application. The same goes for a writing sample and CV. You don't want to turn in a draft or an unpolished document, as that will count against you. And finally, you should have someone review your application materials before submitting them. The best people to review your documents are faculty, because they're the ones who typically review applications and know what you should and shouldn't include. Therefore, you can ask those you're asking to be recommenders if they're willing to review and give you feedback. Remember, faculty are there to help students, and getting feedback is one of the best ways to learn, and it helps make your application material stronger.